The horn sounded. The games have begun. BK watched as all the participants ran towards the cornucopia. BK leaned back in his rolling chair and put his feet up on his desk, his torn up Ultra Boost visible to everyone. Sir, you're the game maker. Why don't you get some new shoes? Or at least some shoes without holes in them. Because, Ricardo, I'm not a shoe guy. You know this, BK responded, not looking away from the action in the arena. He started to pretend to be eating popcorn, eager for what was to come. What am I doing? Why don't I just make some? Ricardo, make me some popcorn pronto. Yes, of course, sir, with butter. The most. BK took out his binoculars and already witnessed the juiciness he was looking for. Whose ever idea this was to have these games, bravo, you deserve a raise. Sir, that was you, one of the guards said. That's right. I'm so smart, BK chuckled. The cornucopia wasn't untouched for long, as the participants frantically hustled their way to the supplies. Shrestha was the first to arrive at the cornucopia. She looked around for weapons, but she could sense the horde of people coming her way, so she quickly gathered a handful of throwing knives and left to hide. Mackenzie, on the dead run, secured a trident and left to hide as well. The majority of the group then arrived at the cornucopia. BK, finally giving his heavily buttered popcorn, watched as Jess grabbed sides. But he was sure she had no idea what they were called. He then looked over to see two separate fights occurring. Colin and Catherine were both pulling on a bag. Neither knew what was contained in the bag, but they knew anything was important. Colin ripped the bag from Catherine's hands. Before Colin had a chance to look through the bag, Catherine retreated into the woods. The District 4 duo both walked up to the cornucopia, letting their district alliance be very obvious. What are we looking for? Seb said, somewhat out of breath. Anything that'll help her survive, Alex said. Can't be picky. And we need to be quick before. Alec couldn't finish his statement before the two of them were ambushed by Joey. He had nothing with him weapon-wise, so Alec and Seb were just fighting to get Joey on the ground. Seeing an opportunity, Tegan tried to sneak in and grab a weapon. Alec, fighting Joey, noticed Tegan in his peripheral. Seb, get Tegan, he struggled as he pointed towards Tegan. Seb hesitated, wanting to help his friend, but after a stare from Alec, he ran and tackled Tegan. At that moment, Julianne and Kristen approached the cornucopia. Seeing the fight that was happening, they both got scared and ran into the woods. Joey managed to grab a knife and force Alec to the ground. Sorry, Alec. Please, Joey, don't do this. Sorry, Scruff. Just know this isn't personal. Any last words? Actually, yeah, I do, Alec smirked. Don't hesitate. Not in this game. Confused, Joey lifted his hand to deliver the killing blow. Alec didn't flinch. Joey thought something was wrong, and when he looked down, he saw a spear sticking out from his torso. His grip on the knife loosened as it fell out of his hands, and he flopped onto the ground. Behind Joey appeared Seb, who let go of the spear. I owe you one, man. Thank you. Don't mention it. SSL for life, right? You killed Tegan? Alec asked. Yeah, it was actually really easy to kill. I was kind of surprised he didn't put up much of a loud snap was heard, and Seb suddenly stopped walking. He took one last look at Alec before he fell to the ground, struggling to breathe. Alec looked up to see Tegan holding a crossbow, just staring from 10 yards away, stunned at what he just did. Alec turned back to Seb. Come on, man. Stay awake. Look at me. Stay awake. Seb's breathing started getting heavier. Win this for District 4. SSL for life. His breathing slowed until it went silent. Alec looked at Seb, devastated. He closed Seb's eyes and held his hand tight, fighting back tears. He wanted to cry, but knew if he didn't focus, he would join Seb. Alec looked up to see Tegan was no longer there. Alec took the knife Joey had almost used to kill him and left the cornucopia. In the distance, he saw Debbie and Frank slowly approaching. He showed his knife and the blood on his clothes to the two distant contestants before they ran away as quickly as possible. Alec looked around and saw more people approaching the cornucopia. He saluted Seb one last time before fleeing into the woods. On the other side of the cornucopia, it was seen that Lucy and Giggs had teamed up, with Lucy grabbing fish bait and Giggs grabbing fish gear. BK thought that was an odd alliance, but in this game, nothing should be unexpected. But when he saw Heather grab a bow, arrows, and a quiver and nearly kill LB and Jacob, BK couldn't help but feel shocked. Heather, the nicest, sweetest pacifist BK has ever known, didn't waste any time before trying to kill someone. He thought maybe this was the Texas in her coming out. LB and Jacob were able to run away before Heather could track them down. Man, there's been a lot of action early, BK said, still munching on his popcorn. He looked around and saw District 3 approach the cornucopia. All right, what do we have to work with here? Hannah said as she and Grace scoured the stockpile. I found a gun, Grace said. Ooh, that's good. Let's keep looking, Hannah responded before she heard a branch crack. She quickly turned and saw Ian try to sneak up behind them. Ah, it's Ian! Grace, quick! Grace, never using a handgun before the training in the games, quickly pointed and fired the gun. Ian ducked and quickly ran away to hide. Smoke coming from the gun. Grace saw where the bullet landed. The back of Hannah. Hannah, writhing and screaming in pain, fell to the ground. It hurt a lot, but she knew it wasn't lethal. Maybe there was a first aid kit in the cornucopia. Grace, help. Ooh, help me up. Hannah struggled. I'm sorry. Grace started to tear up, muttered. It's okay. I forgive you. Just help me up and we can fix this. Not for that. What do you mean? Grace? Grace pointed the gun right at Hannah's forehead, tearing up. I'm sorry for this. Grace, don't, please. Whoa, Grace just shot Chiz. What is even happening? BK shouted in his booth. He leaped from his chair, hands on his head. He kept telling himself that in these games, nothing should go unexpected. But 10 minutes into the games, his mind had been blown. Sir, you might want to see this, Ricardo mentioned. BK turned around to see the three last participants near the cornucopia. Marissa, RJ, and Connor had each grabbed their own weapon, all standing in a circle. BK knew someone was going to die, but he was hoping this was a free-for-all. Marissa held a spear, RJ a sword, and Connor wielded a tomahawk. So, RJ said, breaking the silence between the trio, who's going to make the first move? Marissa and Connor didn't respond. Okay, tough crowd. The three waited another minute or two before Marissa took a stab at RJ. RJ was easily able to block the weak attempt. All right, Connor, your move. What you got? RJ said snarkily. Connor walked over and took a swing, another attempt in which RJ blocked. But as the swing was blocked, Connor stuck out his right foot and tripped RJ, causing him to fall and lose his sword. Connor wasted no time and got rid of RJ. He picked up the sword and stared down Marissa. No hard feelings? Connor questioned. Unfortunately, Marissa responded. The two looked at each other and took deep breaths. Connor took a swing with the sword, in which Marissa blocked. Connor used a tomahawk to hook the spear out of her hands. He snapped it in half and left it on the ground. He picked up dirt and threw it in Marissa's eyes, making her vulnerable. Connor took the tomahawk, and similarly to his kill of RJ, he finished off Marissa before he saw it coming. No hard feelings, Connor mumbled to himself. He looked around, noticing no one had stayed around. He scouted the area to make sure he wasn't being watched. He counted 5 dead bodies near the cornucopia, 2 of them his own kills. He also saw Joey, Seb, and Hannah's dead bodies around. Connor took a deep breath and started scouring the leftover cornucopia to see if there were any supplies he could take with him. Alec was slowly walking in the woods, replaying the whole episode by the cornucopia. How he saw Seb look him in the eyes as he took his last breaths. How Seb had saved his life, but he couldn't save Seb's. How Tegan faked his death and Seb couldn't confirm it. Alec was flustered. He wasn't focused on the future. He was so concerned about the past that he didn't hear the pop of the bow. Heather from long range sniped Alec's knife out of his hand, leaving Alec in a panic. He tried to gather himself, but Heather capitalized on his daze, firing another arrow from long distance into his shoulder. He went down immediately, wanting to scream in pain. All that came out were tears. Heather walked up to Alec, who was rolling on the ground. Alec wiped some tears away to find the face of his eventual killer. Oh, hey, Heather. Alec managed to get out. You you seem like the Katniss type. He forced out a smile and a chuckle. Heather stood there expressionless. Just make it quick and painless. Please, he begged. Still no expression from her. Alec closed his eyes, accepting his death. Then he felt a sharp pain. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. He wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He wanted to breathe, but couldn't. But he wasn't dead. He opened his eyes, noticing there was no longer an arrow sticking out of his chest. He quickly sat up and looked around. Just like the arrow, Heather was nowhere to be found. All Alec could do was sit there, wondering what in the world he was doing there, and how in the world was he going to get out of there. BK watched on the cams as the remaining participants split up. He saw Jess scare off Ian. BK thought Ian was going to die like a chump considering he got scared earlier. It was in the rules, yet he was breaking them. BK was disappointed that his contestants didn't care about his television ratings. BK kept scanning the cameras. He saw 8 different people alone looking to hunt for other contestants. When he got to Connor, Ricardo had to say something. Hey, boss. What's up, Rico? Remember when you said that District 9 were better interns? Yeah, what about it? Yeah, that ended well. Ricardo laughed as he pointed to Joey Mercer's dead bodies. BK gave a displeased look at Ricardo. He knew he was wrong. He really knew he was wrong because one of his current interns killed one of his former interns. That made him look really bad. Doesn't give Ricardo the right to call him out like that. He's lucky BK trusts him so much. Otherwise, BK would have done something about it. BK went back to the cams, still not seeing anything interesting. Colin found medical supplies that were given by an unknown sponsor. Well, unknown to Colin, BK knew everything in this game. He saw Mackenzie hunting for food, Julianne searching for water, and Tegan pricked by thorns while picking berries. As nighttime approached, it was almost time to send out the cannon shots. But one last look at the camera, and BK saw something intriguing. Grace still had the gun in her hand. She hadn't let go of it since she fired it. How she killed her district teammate because she didn't know how to shoot a gun. She hadn't stopped crying since it happened. Alec was hiding in a bush, watching Grace just sit there. He had just survived 2 near-death experiences. He was going to hide because for sure 3rd time's a charm for him. He had been handed 2 extra lives. He wasn't going to just throw them away. He saw Grace sit on that log, struggling with what to do next. Her hand holding the gun was shaking. Grace managed to open the chamber of the gun to check how many bullets were left. She closed it and started mumbling. Alec couldn't understand what was being said, but figured she was praying. She took a deep breath and stood up and admired the view. She took in as much as she could. Alec watched as the bang from the gun deafened the thud her body had when it hit the ground. He walked out of the bush towards the body. He squatted down to check her pulse. The sun had set, and cannon shots were heard throughout the arena. Alec looked up to see who had fallen victim of BK's sick games. He saw Joey appear first, and Seb second. He let out a little tear when he saw his face one last time. He saw the faces of Hannah, RJ, and Marissa for the first time in these games up in the sky, and would be the last. And then one final shot was fired. The pick of the girl inches from his feet appeared in the sky. Alec looked down, closed Grace's eyes, and sighed. Cannons fired no more, and thus signaled day 2 of the games. 6 people died, 16 remained. Alec thought about the carnage that was to come. 6 people in 24 hours. That's 1 every 4 hours. It was an intense first day, Alec thought. But as much as he wanted to rest, he knew he couldn't. He stood up, and just like he did with Seb, saluted Grace before he saw her for the final time. He started to leave, but decided to go back. He picked up the gun he picked up the gun used to take 2 lives and stared at it. It could really aid him in his chances to survive. But it didn't feel right. He took one last look at the weapon and threw it off a nearby cliff. He watched as the gun fell hundreds of feet into a creek. Alec looked up at the moon in all of its beauty. He enjoyed its presence. He turned around back into the woods, hoping he would be able to enjoy the moon past tonight.